Hello and welcome back to Mr. Miller's Art Room. Today we have a fun project, as we always do. We are going to be creating a seaside sunset picture. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about with the seaside sunset is that when the sun is high in the sky, the sun is often seen as very bright yellow, but the sky is very blue. Now, this is the result of the way that light strikes our atmosphere and lights up the sky. However, when the sun starts to lower itself in our horizon line, the light is coming into the earth at an angle. The light around the sky starts to change colors. In fact, it starts to have a sort of fiery yellow, orange, and red. Hue is another word for color. Now, this is particularly striking when you see it on a seaside or at the edge of an ocean or at the edge of a large lake. And what happens is that there are little flecks of light that reflect off the water, which are really, really fun to paint. We are actually going to first draw the sunset low in the sky and the water underneath. Then we'll add some clouds as well. Typically, I like doing this with crayons. You could also use a Sharpie. For the purposes of our practice today, I'm going to go ahead and use a Sharpie because it's easier to see in the camera view. However, a crayon works perfectly well for this exercise. Then what we're going to be doing is using our tempera liquid paints in order to give some life and color to our picture. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create 3 layers of waves. The waves at the front, the ones closest to us, are going to be larger. The ones that are kind of in the middle are going to be a little less large. And then the waves in the horizon, or the furthest area where the sky meets the water, are going to be the smallest. It's almost not even going to look like waves. It's going to look like a very straight, wiggly line. So what we'll do is first we'll come down over here very low on the paper. And what we'll do is we'll use these curved lines, go up and up and up and down and up. The next step is going to be making some of our waves in the middle line a little less high, something like this. Notice that I'm not letting those waves peak up. Well, that's because when waves are a little bit further away from you, they look a little bit smaller. Now, the hardest one that we'll do is this final wave line, this final line where the ocean is further away from us. It's not going to be 100% straight because there's still waves coming into the shore. But what I'll do here is I'm going to draw a straight line, but just give it a little bit of a wiggle like this.
That's beautiful, Mr. Miller. It reminds me of my youth on the Thames.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monocle.
Now, where will the sun go?
We're going to place the sun not in the center. We're going to place it a little bit off to the side. Usually in pictures, if you have everything centered, it gets a little dry, a little boring. So we're going to set that sun off just a little bit to the side. And what's more, we're not going to use a full circle.
Then what kind of circle shall we use?
Well, anytime you use just a part of a circle, it's known as a semicircle.
Ah, yes. Semi means just part of something. So, a semicircle. Everyone say it with me. Semicircle. Very good.
From here, what we'll do is we're going to take our crayon or our marker, we're going to touch the line of the horizon line, and we're just going to make a fairly large semicircle that starts and stops on the edge of the line right here. And we're going to leave that alone. The next step is to make some clouds in the sky. I'm thinking 3 is a good number, and I don't want them all in the center. Now, there are different ways that some students make clouds, but if you really want to know how clouds work, the best way to make a cloud is that typically what you'll see is that the bottom of the cloud is somewhat flat. That's because that when clouds are in the atmosphere, they're actually sitting on top of air that is thicker and more dense than the cloud itself. So it kind of smushes flat at the bottom. The way to do this is we will draw a flat line, a flat horizontal line. Then we're going to do some loops, come up high towards the center, and then we'll come a little bit lower to meet the edge of the cloud. We'll do this 2 more times. Now I drew about a large one right there. Maybe I'll have a thinner, smaller one somewhat above, and then maybe I'll do one that is a little bit smaller down here, and it goes off the page a little bit. It's okay to have things go off the page. That actually gives us a more realistic sense that there's life happening beyond our picture.
Those look beautiful, Mr. Miller. Now what do we do?
Well, what we're going to do is utilize our paints. We're going to use a paper plate as our palette. And there are videos in my repertoire here that we have that show how best to utilize our plates. What I'm going to do is put just a little dollop of yellow on the plate, a little dollop of red, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of white. Notice that I have them a little bit distant. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is take your brush and just swirl all this paint around. That is a waste of paint, a waste of your time, and a waste of our time. We want to make sure that we utilize these colors appropriately. So we have to have good palette management. Everybody say with me, palette management.
Palette management.
Very good. So, typically, we have 2 different kinds of brushes. I have a few of these at certain schools. You can do this with a larger brush, but since I have mostly these size brushes, I'm going to use this one. It's also important to have a cup of water as well. I like doing this in stages. So first what I'll do is I will color the sun yellow. Now the next color that I'm going to do is red. Now notice I haven't washed my brush out yet because these colors are very similar, and since I'm going to red as a step up from orange, it's actually going to make it so that the orange slightly turns into the red. And so what I'm going to do is do the rest of the sky in this red. And as I continue to paint, it's going to step away from orange to orange red to red. And I'm going to do that for the rest of the sky, but not on the clouds. I have to paint around the clouds. So it's going to be very important that I'm paying attention to the way my brush is moving and where my brush is placed. So I pay careful attention and go in and around the clouds just like so. Now I just want to show this because this is an important thing to understand. I'm a very good artist. I like to think I am, at least. However, sometimes I make a mistake, and you can see right here where I accidentally brushed my red into the cloud. Well, that is no reason to quit.
Why is that, Mr. Miller?
Because this is not perfect class.
It's art class.
That's correct, Mr. Monocle. So, if you make a mistake like that, it's going to be okay because there are things that we can do to fix that. But you just need to make sure that you don't panic and think about a solution.
That looks like a beautiful red sky. Now what are we going to do with the water, Mr. Miller?
Good question. Well, first things first. What color is the water going to be?
Well, I take it will be blue.
Well, that's correct, Mr. Monocle. But before we can go to the blue, we need to do something special with our brush.
Yes, you have to wash your brush.
That's correct. Before you go to a very vastly different color, you need to make sure that you wash your brush completely. So I dip my brush in the water, and I scrub, back and forth, back and forth. And you want to do this a little while. Make sure that your brush is touching the bottom of your water bucket or water cup so that it's really scrubbing the extra paint out. Then you can set that aside, and we can start painting the water. So I'll get a little bit of blue. Now here, it's okay if we go between the lines. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mimic the same curved, swooping lines as the waves. Now, you won't really necessarily see it per se, but you'll see the mark making that I make after the paint dries. And that'll really help sell the idea that this is water. And if you get a little paint on your table, that is not a big deal because that's why we have table cleaners. So go ahead and paint this entire water area blue, and then when you get to the edge of the horizon line where the sky meets the water, you're just going to be a little bit more careful because you don't want it to mix too much into the sky and the sun itself. So notice I'm being very careful here.
Excellent work, Mr. Miller, but it still feels like something is missing.
Well, there is. You see, when waves peak up, what happens is that they have a little bit of a white cap at the edges of the waves. Now, you got to be careful in art because not all art is made with big, bold moves. Sometimes you have to be very careful. So I'll show you what I mean. We wash our brush out to make sure that our brush is nice and clean for the next color we're going to use. The next step is to get some of this white. We're going to pick it up. Now, instead of really smushing it down, what I'm going to do is very gently let it sweep across the waves. Sweep across the waves, just very gently, just touching just the surface and moving like this. Now, you don't have to be directly on the lines of the waves, but we want to give it that white crest, just like that. And it's going to mix a little bit into the blue, and that's a good thing. That's really going to sell it. And finally, for the very last touch on our picture, we want to wash our brush out and understand that water is very reflective, like a mirror. And so what happens is that when light hits it, it bounces off the water and goes to your eyes. So what we'll do is we'll mimic some of that reflectiveness by using our red and yellow colors. So I'll grab a little bit of yellow, just a tiny bit, and I'm just going to touch a little bit of the yellow where the white caps are, because that's where it would reflect off of. And I'm just going to do that right below where the sun is located, but not all the way, because the sun isn't everywhere. Now, if I push too hard, the yellow is going to mix with the blue and make too much of a green. So we want the paint sitting right on top. Then I'll get some of this orange maybe, and see where the orange is over here. Maybe I'll get a little bit of the orange to touch some of these white caps right here to show that reflection. Get a little bit more orange. This over here and here. Then I'll wash my brush out because it's getting a little too mixy. And then I'll get some red, and I'll add some red touches where the sky is red below here. You don't have to do them all because it's not going to do that with every single white cap. We just want to give that idea that the water is reflecting this beautiful light.
Well, Mr. Miller, what about that mistake you made on the cloud?
Good point, Mr. Monocle. So what's going to happen now, I figured out a solution as I was painting. Well, I have white paint, and I accidentally painted the top of this cloud with red. So what I'm going to do is get a thick dollop of white. And what I'm going to do is just kind of cover that red. I don't want to push too hard. It'll mix too much. A little bit more. There we go. Now that white is going to cover that red, and that's good enough for my house. So this has been our Sunset Seascape, and for Mr. Monocle and I, we say good day.
We said good day.